put on a show for the people out here, you know. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for taking the time for so generously turning your radio dials all the way to the right. We're living in very dangerous times. Our future is imperiled, and I, of course, am referring to the disastrous situation in our school system. Recently, I've been in Washington, D.C., where I met with the Congressional Committee on Commerce, and I have been working hard on trying to get the Congress to bend a few arms and return traditional television broadcasting to the airways in a way that would allow the children of America to pick up the positive energy and the positive flow of this kind of programming. It's a daunting task, even though the members of the committee saw my point immediately. They'll probably have to bow to commercial interests, and the most we can expect is some kind of craven capitulation. Our future is imperiled again, and I, of course, as I said, I'm referring to the disastrous situation in our school system. It's no secret to anybody who has a child or knows anybody who has a child. In fact, the Pentagon has commented on this recently, and perhaps that's a good thing. Perhaps that's what it's gonna take. It's gonna take a military coup to raise the pathetic levels our students are obtaining in class. Some say the fault is the curriculum. Well, I don't buy that, mister. Personally, I say the curriculum matters very little. Abe Lincoln learned his ABCs with a simple copy of Mrs. Alcott's primer for young boys and girls and a copy of the good book. He wrote out his lessons on the back of a wooden shovel with a piece of charcoal. That was Abe Lincoln. Personally, too, I believe that with only a few simple fairy tales, the entire economic crisis can be explained. They are The Emperor's New Clothes and The Grasshopper and the Ant. What do you think of that? The Grasshopper and the Ant, it teaches quite a lesson that the young folks could do well to learn. If you keep working, if you keep doing what you have to do, good things will happen to you. But if you want to sit around like the grasshopper, whoa, boy, you're in for a rough ride. But they won't let you know that now, because America has fallen into a trap. The American people, oh my God, the American people have taken it upon themselves to fall into a trap where their lives are defined by buying things they don't need with money that they don't have. They'd learned a lot from this fable about a grasshopper and the ants. The Emperor's New Clothes could tell you all you need to know about how con men, liberal con men, and a few Republicans ripped off America and bankrupted both financially and spiritually. Botany could be taught with Jack and the Beanstalk. What do you think of that? Yes, just a few simple fables, and that's all we need. But not the liberals, no, sir. They don't think so. In fact, they can't wait to indoctrinate our beloved youth. Our beloved youth with sly tomes of politically correct abstraction and chicanery. What do you think of that? I don't think much of it, because it's just spend, spend, spend. But do we really need it? I think not. What do you think? Why, you may ask yourselves, do we need to keep raising taxes to pay janitors six-figure salaries? I don't know what's going on in this country, and it really, really bothers me. Why must we continue to fund failure? Clearly, since liberals took over our school system, students have become unteachable. Their results on tests, it's a joke. And what are the schools teaching? You might ask yourselves. Well, they're teaching failure and they're teaching liberalism. They're teaching hedonism and God knows what else. Rush Limbaugh never went to college, and neither did Glenn Beck or Sean Hannity. Neither did Roy Kroc, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, or even Bob Dylan. We are wasting our precious resources on bad education. So typical of the liberals to incite the rabble to aspire to levels of education that are frankly needless. That's why I'm all for a new program hatched in that great incubator of conservative thought, the Cato Institute. It's called 8 and Out. Effectively, we'll have public education until 8th grade, and then only the best and the brightest will continue. The others will be directed to apprenticeship programs, the military, or jobs in the industrial sector, which will now be able to compete against the Chinese on a salary basis. It'll sort of have a deflationary effect, which will allow us, as I've said, to compete again against the Chinese and the other third world nations on a salary basis, because we'll import the third world to the United States. It's a really new concept, and I thought it sounded pretty good. However, Bubbles didn't think so, and neither did her new friend, Jane Fonda, who said it sounded straight out of Dickens. Something, she added, that her ex-husband, Ted Turner, would have come up with when he went off his medication. I didn't say anything, but kind of mumbled until Bubs announced they were screening Clute in the projection room for the third time. Oh, my God. You know, between us, I knew Ted Turner pretty well, and I always thought Ted did some of his best thinking when he went off his meds, but, you know, who am I to say? It's tough out there. It's really tough out there, and it's tougher for people in the political class than probably in any other profession. People like to knock politicos these days, and they're right to do so. Almost all Democrats and a number of Republicans. A number of Republicans should make you suspicious. Old Pep has determined the political climate of today is one of innuendo and exaggeration, if not out-and-out lies. Doublespeak is the coin of the realm. Why, there's as much chances of going back to the golden rule as there is that the Fed's going to reinstitute the gold standard. It's just not going to happen, and it's sad. I would also like to take this occasion to mention that this was not always the case. Years ago, there were men of integrity in Washington. Men like Teddy Roosevelt. You remember Teddy. You know, Madame Hepzibah, the medium that Bubbles has contracted, has said I just might be the reincarnation of the Colonel, as he liked to be called, Teddy Roosevelt. And, you know, I said, Bubs, you're putting a lot of weight on my shoulders. Bubs said, I guess we'll have to call you Atlas. I said, Bubs, this is quite an honor, but it's quite a task. America is in a real mess. I don't even know if old Teddy could have gotten us out of it, but I'm going to do the best I can to live up to her beliefs. Besides Teddy, I could mention other men: John Hay, McKinley, Elijah Root, Henry Cabot Lodge, Mr. Taft, Mr. Sherman. And as strange as it may seem, yes, there were even some Democrats with moral decency. I refer overall, of course, to William Jennings Bryan, a Democrat, a man of God, a preacher, a humble man of the American heartland, and the only cabinet member in the history of the Republic to resign his post on moral grounds. When Woodrow Wilson betrayed his pledge to America to keep the nation out of the conflict raging in Europe, William Jennings Bryan said, "Mr. President, neither you nor Mr. Darwin will make a monkey out of me, sir. I quit." I'd like to see a little get up and go in this administration mirroring those words. You'd like to believe the recent scandal involving the Secret Service and prostitutes would be sufficient to precipitate mass resignations, but apparently not. Change you could believe in is just a continuation of the Clinton years. Illicit sex, hanky-panky, and a betrayal of the public trust. Betrayal of the public trust. I don't know where it's going to go. There is no honor amongst thieves, I said a few weeks back on Pep Talk, and clearly it hasn't changed since then. What was going on down in Cartagena? I know Cartagena well. The people down there are generally friendly and law-abiding, and we send down our Secret Service boys, and they start carrying on like a bunch of drunken cowboys. This just shows you how inept and incapable Obama is of cracking the whip and running a tight ship. I cannot see this happening under Richard Nixon. But what are we to do? We have to continue with what we've got. We have to tolerate it. I'm sick. I'm really sick of what happened down there. We are giving ourselves a bad name in Colombia, and it's the Obama administration responsible for this. It makes me sick. In fact, I've been doing so badly recently, I must confess, I'm big enough to say that I've been going to therapy. Bubble said it was time for me to go to therapy. And, she thinks I need to work on problems I have with my father. Like I've got problems with my father. Look, everybody has problems with my father. He's that kind of a guy. As I've told you previously on Pep Talk, my dad, Red Pepper, was the kind of guy who could probably settle a war in the Middle East in the morning and have another one raging with Switzerland by lunchtime. That's just the way he is. He's contrary, but he's my dad. And, and she said probably, logically, your mother too. My mom, who passed a large portion of her days in a madhouse, a victim of liberalism. She obviously had an effect on me, and so Bubs is very happy that I'm going to therapy. It was part of the deal we worked out to let me come back into the big house and out of the pool house. And, well, it's not so bad, but I tell you, if Jane Fonda continues to hang around Eagle's Claw, I'm going back to the pool house, unless they show Barbarella. I'm getting tired of Clute. And anyway, I really, am no stranger to this therapy game. I've been in therapy before. In fact, I was introduced to the couch under the most incredible circumstances. You see, my roommate at my college, John Wilkes Booth, was coerced into seeing a shrink by his family owing to certain sexual orientation issues, which I, for one, never noticed and never guessed. And, he, however, was not up for it, and one day proposed that I take his place, understudy the part, so to speak. He just didn't want his family, a wealthy one from Omaha in the meatpacking business, to know that he wasn't showing up. I always needed money on account of Red's parsimonious inclinations. Bubs wants me to explore that, and so I said yes. To my surprise, the whole affair worked out swimmingly. I made friends with his therapist, a relationship that continues to this very day with Dr. Robin Gretsch. And in time, I was understudying for quite a few people, too, discouraged to show up, but too neurotic and embarrassed to cancel their appointments. And this put some real money in my pocket. It turned out to be great fun as well. I'd show up at the office, I'd bring coffee and donuts, and the doc was never less than pleased to see me. He said, "Glad to see you, Pep. Always glad to see you. You know, my patients are nuts." And thank God they've all taken to sending you instead. And we talk sports and we talk politics and about what losers his patients were. And sometimes Father Tony, the deaf priest who used to hear confession across the street, would come over, particularly in the afternoons when the Braves games were on. And it was my introduction to psychotherapy. I would imagine that in all of the world of psychology and therapy and such things, that you would have to include Dr. Gretsch right up there with the big guys, Jung and Freud and, well, you know, these type of people. And, you know, we would hang out and, you know, well, anyway, I decided, though, I was going to have to talk to my father. I mean, you know, the whole idea now that I'm going into therapy might disturb Red, and, you know, he's that kind of a guy, very private, doesn't like anybody talking to him in public or in private. So I get on my cell phone and I call him up, you know, and I said, "Dad?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "You know, I'm going into therapy." He said, "You're what?" He said, "I'm going into therapy, and I'm probably going to go twice a day." And he said, "Twice a day? I used to go 4 times a day." That's how my father is. I do too. He does 4. It's never going to change. So I said, "Oh, I didn't know about this." He says, "Oh, yeah, well, you finally come around. You know what I always say." And I said, "What do you say, Dad?" He said, "No time like now for putting off till tomorrow what you should have done yesterday. No time now for putting off till tomorrow what you should have done yesterday." And I said, "Are you insinuating I waited too long?" He said, "Probably, but it wouldn't have mattered. It's all your mother's fault. God bless her. That woman meant well, but she was a victim of liberalism, which just destroyed her in the end. And back then we had no treatment. There was no cure. All you could do was just watch her fade away." And, you know, he said, "What do you think you're going to find out in this therapy?" I know a little bit about it myself, as I've just told you. I rode a couch 4 times a week, and I said, "I really don't know, but I'm hoping that I can understand who I am." And he said, "Why don't you just ask me?" And I said, "You don't sound very positive about my process of self-exploration." He says, "Not that at all, but no therapist is going to be able to tell you more about yourself than your own father." And I felt like saying, "But Dad, you were never around to see me. I mean, if I really wanted to know who I was, I'd probably have to go ask Bingo." But, you know, that's how my father is. And we talked about therapy and things, and he tried to teach me. He said, "You know, one thing you got to know about therapy is don't believe everything they're telling you." And I said, "Okay." And he says, "Because they are not believing everything you're telling them." I said, "Dad, that is good advice." And he said, "Yes, it is. I'm your father. That's my job, to provide good advice." And we chatted a little bit more, and we really didn't get anywhere, but we never do. So once that was accomplished, once I'd spoken to Red about the therapy I was planning to undergo, I felt free, and starting next week, I'll be back with, guess who, Dr. Gretsch, trying to work through these issues, these Oedipal issues and other issues, and all kinds of issues. You know, right now, at this juncture, old Pep wants to give you all some good news, and this is the kind of good news I think that's going to make Richard Quinn very happy. We've got a new sponsor. You know, we've been having some problems, getting sponsorship. It's not been easy after Russia's little slip. A lot of people have felt they had to pull back from this kind of a show, but no, that is hardly the case with Andy down at Fairchild's Funeral Parlor on Broadway, our new sponsor. For over 4 generations, Fairchild's has been making sure your loved ones are safe and sound beneath the ground. And at affordable prices, too, so that you, the survivors, don't get buried alive by burial costs. Talk to us at Fairchild's, and you'll see why we say, them what dies will be the lucky ones. You know, I wrote that, and I think it's a pretty good piece of copy, and I think they're pretty good with a shovel. So if you know anybody who is beginning to smell funky, call up Andy at Fairchild's and tell him Pep sent you, and you'll probably get a discount. You know, last week I told you Bubbles and I went out to California. We had a great time. We played some golf, and we hung out with some old friends. But most importantly, we were at the Trophy Wives Ball. It was a great time. We were there, and Lydia and Lou Shapiro were there, and a lot of big names in the Republican Party were there, and it was interesting because it looks like Romney's going to be the candidate, and if I had the money, I'd probably throw my hat in the ring and run as a third-party candidate the way Teddy did. I'm trying to live up to Madam Hepzibah's vision. But I don't have the money, and so what I'm thinking of doing is running for mayor of Upper Nyack, a small town on the banks of the Hudson River, close to where I live, and with the intention of expanding my political base little by little to Nyack, South Nyack, whatever. And while we were there, I forgot to tell you last week, I ran into one of my old buddies. The man is Major Michael Bodyhouse. And Major Mike is the cricket editor for the Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph, one of the great conservative independent newspapers published in Britain. I know him very well. Major Mike is a wonderful man, a true English gentleman, and Major Mike spent a good hour sparing Bubs no flattery. And he also listened intently to my take on the Euro meltdown, and he was impressed. Old Pep knows his European news. And he was impressed. He said Greece, you have to remember, is given the world 2 gifts. And both, as Major Mike said, require ample lubrication. The Greeks had the olive oil, and democracy is a greasy business, and he left it at that. I couldn't have agreed more. The Major was also glad to hear I was running for mayor of Upper Nyack, and that Pep Talk was faring so well, and he loved the idea for restoration of traditional TV, fondly recalling the American westerns on BBC when he was a mere boy. Peppy said, he told me, he said, if you were British, you'd have a knighthood by now, and Bubbles agreed and said she would look into buying me one, however. Normally this time of year, the market is flooded with dubious Italian titles, and effectively the days of the great white Russian bargain bin is long gone. So we're going to take our time, but I'm thinking that maybe Sir Pep might not be a bad way to go when I run for mayor of Upper Nyack. I mean, it could be quite something. I've got incredible plans. I've been talking to the boys. We had a meeting a couple of days ago, a conference call. We want to bring a hockey team here. We found one. It's bankrupt, and with a little help from Bubbles, we could float it so we'd have a hockey team. We want to basically restore the borders between Upper Nyack, and South Nyack, and that'll get some revenue flow coming in as people have to cross the border and pay a toll. Nobody had thought of that before, but you know, things come back and feudalism might just be making its re-entry. And that's about all old Pep has been up to. Things have been calm, but next week looks like it's gonna be a really rough ride. I gotta go back to Washington, lobby for traditional television, get back here, get my campaign kicked off, and prepare for the Republican convention. It's gonna be a wild ride, but you can imagine I'm up to the task. Old Pep is feeling great. His love life has been restored, and even if Bubs wants to hang out with that crazy Democrat friend of hers, it's okay with me. I am focused, I am sober, and I am ready to give my all to America. So, God bless you all. I'll see you next week. You are the greatest. I love you. This has been Pep Talk. Isn't it wonderful to hear me ending on a positive note? Medication works. You bet it does. Heil Pfizer. Good night.
Mics are off.
It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.
I'm gonna get some pyrotechnics for you. Should be like fireworks behind you.
We're almost there, Rick. We've really improved it a lot, but I think we need some pyrotechnics.
Smoke machine, maybe. You know.
Well, you just bring the angry human in here. He is a smoke machine, but I'm on the wagon. They just wait. We can smoke it.
This ain't no disco around, yeah.